thank you very much, Christopher, and thank you for inviting me to be here. So this is actually an experiment for me, because I've decided not to use any slides at all, and let's see how that works. But I was supposed to talk about the next decade of cancer medicine, and I'll do that, or at least share with you that the bottom line is that if you're in life science, it's fantastic, and if you're in cancer medicine science, it's even more attractive. But let's come back to that. Talking a bit about myself, so I have a PhD in pharmacology, and then here in Denmark, when you leave the university and you have your scientific training, then it's not a bad idea to move to Novo Nordisk, where you kind of get your more business managerial kind of treatment. So that's basically what I did, and I worked with diabetes discovery for many years at Novo Nordisk. And as Christopher said, so I got into more and more managerial positions out there. But then, having been there for 18 years, suddenly one day I got a call from one of my former employees, a medical doctor who had started his own biotech company. This was back in year 2000. So he said, so Kirsten, you can't stay at Novo Nordisk the rest of your life. Why don't you start a biotech company? And I told him, so what are we supposed to do? Well, he said it doesn't matter. There's plenty of technology out there, but what really matters is to have the right management team in place. And we have all the right people except for a CEO who knows about managing science and drug development. So I told him, forget about that. Of course, I'm not going to leave my position to start something that we don't know what is supposed to be about. So then he called a second time, and he said, well, something about antibodies. And I told him, well, antibodies, I'm in diabetes science, so of course I knew what antibodies was, but I was really not that excited. And I said, you can send me some papers, I'll have a look at that, but basically I'm not interested. Then he called, as in any fairy tales, a third time, and he said, so Kirsten, since when have you been so arrogant that you cannot show up for a meeting? And you know, it's fair enough. Of course I can show up for a meeting. So I did that, and there I met 6 other people. And we were sitting in this nice cellar in Denmark. Companies don't start in garages because cars are too expensive, so we always start in cellars. So that happened with Novo Nordisk and also with Symphogen, but a pretty prestigious cellar, I would say, with one of the co-founders, a nice villa in Hellerup. Anyway, we were sitting there, and people actually, Christopher's father was there. When he entered the room, we all knew that John Howard was supposed to be the chief scientific officer, and I knew I was supposed to be the chief executive officer, and we also knew who was going to be the chief financial officer. But we were sitting there without any real idea, but especially the CSO had some papers on bispecific antibodies. And I was thinking, well, this is really not, it's already published. So you can't build any proprietary business on something that has already been published. But anyway, I liked the people around the table, which is important. So we started a small company without any ideas. And to be honest, my thinking was, I can always get my money back. It's just to invest something that I can get back immediately right after. And then one of the 7 people that started the company was asked to go to Boston, the big biotech conference, the following week. And he had a business background. So we told him, okay, if you hear anything about antibodies, then please stop up and listen. And the very first evening he called me and said, Kirsten, there's a professor at Boston University talking about polyclonal antibodies. Is that interesting? And I kind of thought, well, are they of human origin? Because back in year 2000, there were so many mouse antibodies, and you know, the immune system reacts towards that because we are not mice. But he said, I don't know. He had no clue about that. But then there were some issued patents, and John Howard had a look at that, and he also thought this was looking kind of interesting. And the reason I'm telling you this story is that in the way I work as a human being is that I actually thought this was really, really exciting, because back in year 2000, a lot of pharmaceutical companies were dealing with monoclonal antibodies. And they had gotten the idea to get to fully human monoclonal antibodies. And that's a smart thing when you do drugs, that you try and cope or copy the way nature works. And the natural immune system produces antibodies. So you have something that works very specific, like missiles, but it doesn't make any harm anywhere else. And that's what it's also about with new drugs. You have something that needs to work and that does not make a lot of harm outside what you're going to treat. So of course monoclonal antibodies was really interesting, and today, many years after, monoclonal antibodies have actually become so successful that it sells for more than 10% of all the drugs in the world. So just think about it. Monoclonal antibodies have been extremely successful and helped a lot of patients, of course. So, but what really made me go from not really interested to become really excited is the fact that the technology that was spotted at Boston University was a mixture of monoclonal antibody. And that made me think, okay, here Symphogen can differentiate from many of the other activities out there, because the immune system is not only specific with the monoclonals, it's also diverse. It actually produces many antibodies. So, and that made me think, okay, here we can have the start of a company which differentiates itself from anybody else. And everybody in year 2000 was so focused on the monoclonal. So to me, that learned me that going from no energy at all to be absolutely engaged and excited was this idea that here we had something that could kind of mimic the way the natural immune system works. And it's always a smart idea to try and mimic the way nature works. Just look at insulin as one simple example. So I hope you can see it's, if you can't, I can see it's an E. I can say it's an E, and it's just something you should think about. At least it works for me. I guess it goes for everybody. If something needs to end up with good results, you need to have some energy, or you need to be engaged. And for me, certainly, it's very binary. Either I'm completely uninterested or I get really excited. So when we got a hold of that technology at Boston University, and I also want to tell you, we got the worldwide rights for this, exclusive rights for this technology for $5,000. It was already a published patent. So don't think that if you find out something really fantastic, that it's worth billions or millions of dollars. It's not. It takes a lot of money and energy to bring some invention into profitable company. We are not even there now, 16 years later, after more than 300 million euro. We are still not there. But at least we got the start by getting the right to this exclusive technology. So that's one thing I think when you get into moving from the academic and what are you going to do afterwards, think about whether the thing you're working with generates some energy. Then I can tell you we're going into Einstein's energy equation. So then let's talk a bit about what creates an energy and engagement. Well, it's very important that the mission you're doing is meaningful, or that there is a clear mission. And for me, that was so clear. I've already told you. But for Symphogen, our vision is to transform cancer from a deadly disease into a chronic disease. And the fact that we can actually make mixtures of monoclonal antibodies, design it, as Thomas also told, it's about understanding the molecular nature of the disease that you want to treat. And fortunately, so much is getting known these days about the various cancers, what's into it, not the least the huge success with the immune oncology area, where not only the cancer cells are in center, but also the many aspects around the cancer cells that affects the cancer immunity cycle, you could say. The fact that Symphogen can actually not only hit the cancer cells, but we can also go for T cells or whatever you have in the cancer immunity cell, actually provides us with the opportunity to tailor-make a cancer product that effectively can treat a cancer patient and hopefully transform the disease from being deadly to become chronic. So for me, I think the mission is really there. And that's where it has been since day one. And I think the idea about doing combination of antibodies and that it can actually get into a chronic disease is not taken out of naivety or philanthropy. Just think about what happened back in the 80s, 1980s. Maybe some of or many of you were not born at that point in time, but anyway, in the 80s the HIV disease came up, and patients died, all of them. There couldn't be anything done. But then Gilead in the US came up with a combination product. So instead of only having a single medicine, they made a combination pill, and that actually transformed HIV from being a deadly disease to become a chronic disease. And that's also the vision with Symphogen. So that's what I would say in oncology, and when I'm gonna talk about the next decade of cancer medicine, I've got absolutely no doubt that there will be a radical improvement in treatment of cancer patients going forward. So you are so lucky to be in the life science area. I can also tell you it's so exciting because we get to know so many things, and to be there and be able to help patients to have something really meaningful to work with. You don't have to think anytime, is it worth going to work today? Yes, of course it is. It's so meaningful. Even with the many crises that we've experienced with the big economic crisis in 2008, I was at Wall Street the day where Lehman Brothers cracked, and people were talking, oh, it's terrible, and I was sitting there, what am I? I was, of course, also out there to raise money. So I went for a walk, and then I thought, at the end of the day, there will always be a need for people who develop better medicine to treat cancer patients. So don't give up. It's not an option. Somebody needs to take it. And I can tell you, it's so exciting to be there. So be pleased that you're in this room and that you work in life science. And then, whether it's cancer or it's another disease, go for what you really find exciting. Of course, there are many, many other interesting and very serious diseases that needs to be dealt with. But think about it, when you go out, you need to have something really meaningful to work with, because it helps a lot. Then we need to have the rest of the equation in place. So the first C stands for culture. That's another thing that is so fun of starting your own company, is that you can actually create the right company culture. And that's of course great, but you can also be in a company that has a great culture. And the one thing that, the advice I would give you is that it's very important when you pick your workplace, that it's a place where you really like to be, that it's a place where wherever you do, that you feel that you are being seen, heard, and understood, and that there are two basic values that needs to penetrate the culture each and every day, and that is trust and respect. It's so important that the people you work with, that you respect them and that you trust them, and vice versa. As I always say to newly employed employees at Symphogen, first and foremost, they become super geniuses, of course, the day they go into the company. But the reason why we always will meet them with trust and respect is because we could cherry pick amongst 50, 100 really well-educated people, but we decided to go for exactly you because you're the very best of the many applicants. So that is very important to tell, that we do trust you, we do respect you, and we think you can add a lot of value to make this result or energy become as big as possible. And my advice to you, when you go out and are going to find a job, it's very important that you're selective. Don't sit there and, I'll do everything to get this. Just relax a bit and think, is this okay for me? Is this a place I would like to work? Also put questions to your boss. It's very, very important that you are selective with your superior. It needs to be a good boss. Otherwise, why would you work for this person? It's so important that you choose your boss, and that is. So feel free to ask questions. So can you provide me with this and that, and what kind of values do you carry, and things like that? Because if it's not really in place, then you can probably find another place to work. So that's amongst the new generation, and people like yourself, you can allow yourself to be a bit critical before you accept a job offer. So then we need to go to the last C. Does anyone have an idea about what that could be? Right. Of course, it's cash. Because that's when I talk to people about this, then say, yeah, Kirsten, it's good with all this philanthropy, and but is there any money into this? And that is important. You need to understand that this equation that leads to results will be zero if you work with something where there is no cash into it. So it's very important that you are respectful of the fact that it takes a lot of cash to develop new drugs. On average, it takes 10 billion Danish kroner to develop a drug. So, of course, you need to consider, will it be possible to sell this product and to get a return of the investment? And I can just tell you that oncology is a hot area to be in, not the least with the immuno-oncology area and all the breakthrough that we are seeing these days. So when you go out there and talk to investors, it is actually possible to have them invest in a company like Symphogen, because they do believe that at the end of the day, when we become successful, it'll pay off, because you can ask for a good price for effective oncology products. One of the things that I've been thinking is, because it's also a question from society, can the society afford to pay, say, $50,000-$100,000 per treatment for this monoclonal and then this and this, where they today, the whole society or the treatment of cancer medicine realizes that you need to do combination in order to get the right effect. But then it becomes extremely expensive. And there I think we have an advantage, because we only ask for reimbursement for one product. We hope to bring all the right antibodies into one product and then only ask for reimbursement for a single product. And that would also become more affordable for societies. So in that case, I think it's a good setting that we have. But you should think about that when you accept working with something. Don't be naive and say that it doesn't make any sense. It does. And I would like to share with you a story where, in the very beginning of Symphogen, where I was somewhat naive, or I hadn't been out to investors and not realized it. So as you know, we got this idea about doing mixtures of monoclonal antibodies, and if you looked into literature back in year 2000, it was so clear that it's obvious to treat infectious diseases with mixtures, because that has been published and proven, and all the hyperimmune globulin, and there's a lot of evidence from a scientific point of view that mixtures work in infectious disease. And I was looking into that, and one of the biggest killers in the world is actually malaria. And our technology fitted 100% to that. So why don't we go out and make a product where we find the right antibodies to hit this malaria disease? And then I just realized, well, you can do that, Kirsten, but there's absolutely no way any investors would invest in that company. And that turned out to be true. And unfortunately, it is so that those patients that are suffering from malaria, they don't have the right buying power. So that was something I had to realize. I was not proud about it, but I wanted Symphogen to become a success. So I simply had to understand that I need to take that parameter into account as well. So my idea is, eventually, when Symphogen starts to become a profitable company, I have promised myself that I will take just a fraction of this surplus, and then I'll invest that in some of the diseases that need better products. Because it's actually, being a human, it's kind of sad that it is like it is, but that's just, you have to accept that you're in a business. It takes so much cash. Those people who invest their money want a return on their investment. So that's just something you should be aware of. And I think that's about it. So my conclusion is that going into the future and looking into the next decade of cancer medicine, I've got absolutely no doubt that there'll be a transformation from cancer being such a terrible diagnosis today to be something that of course will be serious, but it's something that patient can live with. Whether it'll be Symphogen that offers the right products, whether it'll be Genmab that is very successful with their CD38, or whether it'll be other companies that come out with something. I think there's plenty of space for all of us, and I've got no doubt that it is such an exciting area to be in. So I can only tell you that go for it, but certainly not only cancer, there are so many serious diseases out there. CNS is another really tough area to be in, and maybe that'll be the future, because I do think cancer will be resolved, or at least will make a lot of progress in that area, whereas there's such an unmet medical need in the CNS area. So my conclusion is that there's a great future. It's great for you to be in life science. Be pleased about that. You picked the exact right spot. And then I will wish you good luck. I can tell you, I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. I can also tell you it will be hard fun. And that's why I didn't say that, but on the culture part, this is not an 8-hour-a-day job. This is a full-time job. So you better be a place where you really enjoy to be, because it's so exciting that of course you're gonna inject all of your energy into that, such that you'll make a lot of results. So, all the best of luck in the future to all of you, and have hard fun. Thank you.